Coming up soon is Jamie Cudmore, considered one of Canada's all-time best players. Good lock and flank for the lads. 43 caps with Canada, member of Canada at the Rugby World Cups in 03, 07, 2011, 2015, over 250 pro matches in Europe on top of that, and he's currently the head coach of the Pacific Pride program, and Jamie's going to talk to us about that momentarily.
He speaks a bit of French.
Yeah, he
eavesdropping.
He plays at Claremont and knows exactly what he's doing. It's funny, he's known as the enforcer, Jamie Cudmore. He's as hard as nails, tough as old boots.
What a fun opening watching those highlights, Jamie Cudmore. Could have threw a few more on there for those that watch, but just Google Jamie Cudmore and Paul O'Connell. You'll see some nice hockey style rugby, I guess you could say. But anyway, welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. This is Jamie Gray coming to you from Ross, New Brunswick. Just enjoying the back deck at my house today as I record the opening here. But as you know from that intro, we have Jamie Cudmore on, and we'll get to him momentarily, but you're not going to want to miss this one. Let's get to semantics here first. Anytime you need to contact us, we're on Twitter at Canadian Ruck, Instagram, _Canadian_Ruck, Facebook at The Canadian Ruck, and our email is thecanadianruck@gmail.com. Love having our listeners and our viewers. But remember, you got to follow and subscribe. That way you get updated when the new pods are out. And I think we're going to be trying for 2 a week for a little bit, because I've got a backload of 6 recorded interviews, and I'd like to get them out because there's people that have some great messages and great stories about rugby and life that you're going to want to listen to. But we're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Castbox, and of course, our website is now operational, The Canadian Ruck at thecanadianruck.weebly.com. You can get on there to check all of previous pods and see some images of our guests and my favorite podcasts from outside of the Canadian Ruck and things like that. So check it out. Give me some feedback. Saying that, we've still got a couple of hoodies left over. Nice Canadian Ruck hoodies. There's the image of one right there. We've got 2 or 3 left. So if you're interested, please contact me. $40 Canadian plus shipping. Feel free to send me a note and say that you want one, and we'll make it happen. And this week, our big shout out goes to David Castle over in Cardiff, Wales. So we're beyond the Canadian borders with the Canadian Ruck. We're getting some people over in Cardiff, Wales that are listening to the podcast. So really appreciate the tweet, David. He went on to talk about how it's nice to hear the Canadian stories and to hear the interviews. So that's what we're going to keep doing. Thanks for that, Dave. Big shout out to you for sending that in. So looking at that, we're going to quickly look at some rugby news. We're going to bypass the gray area this week because we've got a very strong and lengthy conversation with Jamie Cudmore, and I know that you all want to get to that. But just briefly, in the news right now, friend of the pod, Cole Keith, good Sussex, New Brunswick boy, Applehawk, New Brunswick. He just re-signed with the Toronto Arrows of the MLR. So hats off to you, Cole. That's great news. But the big news is coming out of the Southern Hemisphere. And you might be aware of this by now because it's a couple of days old, but New Zealand's looking to ditch Sanzar and go to an 8 to 10 team competition, which would include all 5 New Zealand franchises, 1 Pacific Island team, and anywhere from 2 to 4 Australian sides. So basically they're saying, see you later, South Africa, and see you later, Argentina. Sanzar would still remain in control of the Rugby Championship as of now. But they're looking like they realize that New Zealand rugby, the Aotearoa, has been really strong for them. But apparently they want to keep that up. Rugby Australia did issue a couple of statements and acknowledge the preferred position in regard to the competition. And they're saying that, we'll look forward to working constructively with New Zealand in the coming weeks to see what can happen. And South Africa said that they've been kept abreast of the thinking from New Zealand all along. So more than likely, South Africa at this time, when this happens, it's looking like it'll be either, I'm hearing 2022, but I'm not 100% certain. South Africa is probably going to join one of the European leagues. Travel will be roughly the same, probably a little bit better, but the time zone will be the I guess kicker for South Africa. That'll be helpful for them. New Zealand's really looking from their perspective that the tournament will deliver an exciting competitive rugby style that their fans and globally and at home will continue to appreciate. So we'll see how that all shakes down, but that's some big news coming out of the Southern hemisphere. As I said, gray area. I got a few topics in mind, but we're gonna bypass that this week. As I said, we got Jamie Cudmore on, and Jamie was a stellar conversationalist there during the interview, and I think you're going to be excited. So sit back, crack a beer, and listen to Jamie's story and his thoughts on rugby and the Pacific Pride. All right, welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. I have legendary Team Canada player Jamie Cudmore with us, who's now coaching the Pacific Pride. Jamie, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to the Canadian Ruck.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to jump right in here. Let's talk about how you became involved in the game. You were born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and you've been involved with rugby for quite a long time. Talk to us about your introduction into the game and how it evolved you into playing for Team Canada and now coaching the Pacific Pride.
Okay, well, it's quite a long one, but so yes, as you said, I was originally born in just outside of Winnipeg. My parents moved out to the West Coast about a week later. I was put in the back of a little VW bug and in a basket, and my dad and mom drove out to the West Coast. They originally went to Oregon, where my uncle Pete was a teacher at the University of Oregon. He was very much involved in athletics. They went down to Oregon and they thought about staying down there, but my father, who's a physician, didn't like the way the American medical system was set up. So he enjoyed working in Canada, and he wanted to stay in Canada. And he's an avid skier. Even though he'd actually never done it, he wanted to be able to ski. And so moving to Canada, they looked at the West Coast, and they fell upon Squamish, which was obviously very close to Whistler. Back in those days, late 70s, it was kind of your typical West Coast logging town, very small. And there was an opening there at a clinic. My dad took that, and that's where it all kind of started. My father originally played rugby in England throughout his university, and that was always kind of his major sport. My mom was into ballet, my dad into rugby, so that's kind of where I went as a kind of a rough and tumble young kid in Squamish. Back in those days, it was either hockey or skiing, as we weren't far from Whistler, and back in those days, it didn't cost an arm and a leg to go skiing.
Yeah.
So, there was those two sports, and there was nothing really in terms of rugby. I was introduced to the game through old Five Nations tapes that my dad used to have, and we'd watch those, and he'd kind of talk about these different players of England and Scotland and Ireland, France, and that's kind of where I got first introduced to the game. But there was no real opportunity to play the game because in normal school you had your soccer, your basketball, your volleyball, all that, and there was no rugby available. So I came to rugby quite late. My original sports were skiing, soccer in the summer. I played baseball like most other kids. Big into skiing, as I enjoyed it. My dad used to take me quite a few times if I wasn't doing too well at school. I'd say, well, we'll take a day up the mountain, especially if we had the old 20-centimeter rule, or if 20 centimeters fell overnight, well, a lot of people would drop work and go skiing. So it was kind of the ski mountain town ideal. So I got pulled into that quite a few times. And then I worked in the summers in the bush, doing kind of odd jobs around town. And I started working for a logging company who the president was also the president of the local club, the Squamish Axemen, a guy named Greg Richmond. And he kind of said, listen, if you guys want to come and play with us on Saturday, well, you don't have to work. And we thought, wow, okay, what's this big thing about rugby? And I understood a bit of it watching these videos of my dad. And I thought, all right, let's give it a go. And it kind of started from there. And playing local kind of third division club rugby in the BCRU.
So how old were you when he said if you play rugby you don't have to work for us?
Well, that was I was about 15, 16 then. I'd had a few earlier trainings the year before where it was just kind of an introduction, and then the year after I was really looking for a sport. And the great thing about rugby, as we all know, it kind of opens up a whole new family. You know, I had all these guys who instantly, because you played together, you had a support network you could count on. You know, I managed to get another job through them, doing some gas fitting, and then just kept working and kept playing, and really enjoyed myself. And so I played for them for a year, and then had an opportunity to go down to the city and kind of progress my rugby. And I moved to West Vancouver and started playing for the Capelanos, which is my club since forever. And that's where I got to another area where kids kind of the same age as me, same mindset, and we kept playing and was having a lot of fun. So it kind of just progressed. So Squamish to Vancouver, and then the year after, they have a exchange program with the East Coast Bays Rugby Club in the North Harbour of Auckland, and I applied for this exchange. I got accepted. So I basically sold everything I had. I'd pick up truck, TV, and all that type of stuff, and just kind of got rid of all that. Got a ticket down south. The club helped out as well, put some money towards it, and off I went. So it kind of, you know, Squamish to Vancouver, year by year by year. The next year, off to New Zealand. Everything went very quickly. So I'm down. By this time, I was down in New Zealand, 19 years old. Having fun, pouring concrete, building houses in the week, and playing rugby every weekend, and we'd go fishing or surfing on the Sundays. It was kind of the perfect life.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed myself, and as I said, like each year I kept progressing, kept getting to a different level, and I was really enjoying myself. So every time a new opportunity arose, I'd said, yeah, let's give it a go, and I kept kind of pushing forward. So that year was really good for myself. I got selected in the Harbour Under 21s team. But at the same time, I was called back into the Pacific Pride program, which, funnily enough, I'm now head coach of. So I was called by my club captain, Julio Dakotas, who I later worked for, and said, listen, you got to come back to Canada. And I said, well, what do you mean? No, I've got Harbour 21s. I'm really excited about this opportunity. He said, I'll see you next week. There was no argument. For any of you guys, anybody that knows Julio or his brothers, they're very convincing in their argument. So yeah, I was on a plane until the next week, and off I went, and I then back to Victoria and joined the Pacific Pride, and then things just kind of kept building. Did a year in the Pride, really enjoyed that. Really, the great thing I think for me at that time was it put me in a professional environment. You know, it's not, you know, as kind of streamlined as it is today, but what it was back then was it was training every day. You had to be there at a certain hour. You had your weights after, and you had to sort your life out around work and life and school, and kind of create that good balance, which sets you up perfectly for professional rugby. Came back, got involved with the Pride, and as I said, got into a training regime that perfectly set me up for professional rugby. There's that structure that you have to adhere to, and you have to get, you know, everything organized so that you can excel. You know, with the weights, with your food, with all that. Which the following year, I got a great opportunity to move to Wales and play with Llanelli, now the Scarlets, and it was unbelievable because I'd gone from Squamish the next year to Vancouver, and then to New Zealand, and then I'm back in Victoria, and I'm in the Pride program, and the Pride program is amazing because we've got all these guys similar age, we're all competing, we're all playing in the BC Premier League, which back in those days was quite a good level. Unfortunately, it's dipped over the last 10-15 years. And next thing you know, I get this opportunity to go to Wales. So as I said earlier, I said, you know, these opportunities kept coming, and I just kept working hard, and I thought, all right, let's do it, off to Wales. So took the contract. I think I was making about $1,200 a month, but I had a house and I had a car, so I didn't have much really to worry about. I still didn't know, even back at the beginning when I was playing, that it was possible to play professional rugby. So off I went to Wales, and I remember I've got this photo in my head, and I'll probably never forget walking into the change room that morning, and I just look, and there's like Scott Quinnell, Stephen Jones, Lee Davies, John Davies, Mark Jones, like all these, like it's basically the Welsh team, a couple Irish, three brothers who Simon's now was the forwards coach for Ireland. All these guys sitting there, and I'm just like, how the hell did I get here? This is, and I just thought, well, I gotta make my mark, and I better work hard here, because otherwise I'm gonna look like an idiot. Everybody's looking at me and they're like, who's this Canadian guy and where's he from? So I had a great year. The great thing that they set up there for me and a few other younger guys was you trained with a professional team all week, and if you got selected in the team the weekend, obviously you'd play or you'd be on the bench, or you'd get loaned out to a first division club. So back in there, it used to be Premiership, First Division, and then all the divisions below that. And I played for a team called Llandovery, which is further up west, which is kind of a farming community. A lot of boys only spoke Welsh. They like to take the piss out of me. The first training I went to on a Thursday night, they're all calling the lineouts in Welsh, so I had no idea I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm like, I thought they spoke English in this country. So I was completely lost. And then about 10 minutes later, they all burst into laughter and quite happy with themselves with the jokes they were playing on the stupid Canadian guy. Anyway, I started playing with them every weekend if I wasn't involved with Llanelli, and I got a few starts with Llanelli, quite a few off the bench, and then a lot of games with Llandovery. So it was perfect. It was for a young guy trying to work hard, trying to get to that next level. I had games, or at least half a game every weekend, depending on who I was playing with. So it was really, really good in terms of my progression. And then again next year, came back, got selected in Canada tour that summer. We went to Australia, came back again, and that went on into the World Cup in 2003. And I got selected in that squad, played in that World Cup, and that's when, unfortunately, that year is when the region setup got started in Wales. Not so much, unfortunately for me, but yes, unfortunately for me, but not so much for Welsh rugby, because I think they really needed to change things there. There was a lot of foreigners taking up a lot of spots of Welsh guys, and I understand why they went to the regions. And the director of rugby, Guy Jenkins, was really good to me, saying, listen, we'd love to keep you, but if you can go and look somewhere else and find another club, you're probably going to want to do that, because you're not Welsh qualified. You're always going to get looked over by a Welsh guy. And I appreciated that honesty, and I started looking around with kind of different agents and people that I knew. And when we were down in the World Cup in 2003, Mike James helped me out a lot by setting me up with his agent, and we started talking to different clubs in France. And that's kind of how the whole France chapter started. His guy Bruno sorted me out with a contact in Grenoble. And we kind of worked through the contract towards the end of the World Cup, and I ended up accepting that offer and going off to Grenoble. Well, this is kind of, early 2000s. It was very difficult to kind of understand exactly where this was, know anything really about it. So, I do a little bit of searching on the internet. The internet wasn't like it is nowadays. So it was kind of books and talking to people and understanding exactly where it was. And next thing you know, off I went to Grenoble and landed in Lyon, not really knowing where the hell I was, didn't speak any French. And that's kind of where the big French adventure started back in 2003 after the World Cup.
That's a pretty cool journey. Like you're one of the few people that I've spoken to that hasn't played didn't play university rugby, that has played for Team Canada. You spoke a lot about other sports that you played, and being a multi-sport athlete is something I endorse. And you spoke about that for quite a bit here at the start. And the family aspect of a rugby team, just that camaraderie and your brotherhood. I had on a side note, I had a really good friend of mine just passed away a few weeks ago, and he was a rugby brother. And the whole rugby community kind of came together and did whatever we could to help his family. And, he's got 3 young boys and he left behind a wife. So it's, I fully understand that family aspect of rugby community. So you hit on all 3 of those things in the matter of, 5 or 6 minutes of talking. You're in France now, that, you played your first World Cup in 2003. And then you went on and played 3 more. And you played 2007, 11, and 15. And it must have been different. I'm going to share my screen here. I want to show you a little clip. And watching this, would you have done this in the 2003 in Australia?
So the French players now pulled in by Doucetois and Cudmore, who speaks a bit of French.
Yeah,
Eavesdropping.
He plays at Claremont and knows exactly what he's doing. It's funny.
Yeah, probably not until 2003. No, I didn't have the experience that I did there in 15. That's for sure.
So,
sorry.
I was just going to ask, did you hear anything that they were trying to say, or did they throw you out right away? Did they curse at you, or did they laugh?
I knew exactly what I was doing. Because those last few years, Nathan Hines and I were playing together at Claremont, second row partners, and we used to do this all the time. And I think if I'm honest, I think I got it from Nathan. He would kind of drag slowly back sometimes when it was a line-out, maybe a penalty or what have you. And he'd act like he was doing up his shoes, kind of behind play. And when they come in and kind of have a little huddle walking towards the line-out, he would normally walk through the huddle, getting back onto our side. So we've done that numerous times in Heineken Cup games in the years previously, and I knew exactly what they were doing. Damien Shuley, who calls the lineouts, also called the lineouts at Claremont with us. He's coincidentally also my neighbor in Claremont, so we're good friends. So I just got in and I said, "Oh, Damien, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? What are we doing?" And he kind of looks up and he's like, "Oh no, get out of here!" I was like, "Oh, try to pull me out of the way. Get out of here, get out of here." And I just had a little laugh inside, and I knew they were going middle back and they wanted to drive it, but unfortunately our tactics at that time were to stay on the ground, which I wasn't too happy with. But regardless, that's what it was, and I kind of got back in line. I said, "Oh, this is where they're going, boys. We got to try and stop it." And unfortunately, they got through and scored a try. I think just under the post after that. But it was a bit of a laugh for that one for sure.
Yeah, I remember watching that live, and I thought that's priceless, because I think you always have somebody in your team that tries to do that, but you seem to get away with a little bit more than maybe the regular folk would have. Yeah. So those 4 World Cups.
You just gotta act like you know what you're doing.
That's right. So you had the 2003 in Australia, 2007 in France, 2011 New Zealand, 2015 in England. Which one was your favorite?
I don't think there's one favorite. I've got great memories from every single one of them. Obviously 2003 being the first one. I'm kind of this young. I'm a young guy, kind of eyes open to the rugby world, not really understanding the whole professionalism thing yet, as it was still quite new at that time. And then France was amazing because I had started to build a name in France. Living there at that time and joining up with the team was great. Then New Zealand was huge because people there were amazing. I see a lot of similarities to the people in Wales and the people on the west coast of Canada with New Zealand, in that they love the rugby, and then the whole landscape is very similar, in my opinion, to the west coast. Being on the same ocean, everybody loving being outdoors, fishing a lot, kind of getting the bounty from the sea like we do on the west coast, and everybody loving their rugby. and really getting behind all the teams, not just their own team. Where we were based up north, there's Canadian flags everywhere, Japanese flags for the other teams that were in our group. And every time you went out, like, people wanted to shake hands and talk, and, just really, really great atmosphere. And then England again was huge in that, I brought my family over, my wife and daughter were there, my boy as well. So that was amazing to have them involved in that, in my last World Cup, and to be able to captain my country at that World Cup as well was a huge honor. I think it was there's good things to take out of all four.
Especially probably that last one's in England. You said your father was from England, correct? So that would have been kind of nice to be back where your father started his rugby playing days, in a sense, and got to captain the team there. That would have been really, really, really neat for you, I imagine.
No, it was, and him being there as well, and my family being there was really, really great. And then kind of driving home afterwards was a lot of fun. The whole atmosphere and everything throughout the finals and stuff. It was some good memories.
That's great. I've always been a fan of something like the Churchill Cup. I always loved, when I get a chance to watch some of those games on TV, which didn't happen a whole lot, but it seemed to be a really significant tournament for Canada. I felt like it helped our national program moving forward. Do you think something like that can be brought back, or is it too big of an agenda to try and get it on the table?
I think the time for the Churchill Cup has come and gone. I agree with you that it was a good tournament back in its day, and that we had some better competition for Canada and the States in Japan, and definitely with the Saxons. I think it was a good opening kind of salvo for them in terms of their player development. I think if we were to do it now, I don't think it would be beneficial for us. I think we need to look more around us in terms of playing with MLR teams, playing against the States, playing against Brazil, playing against Chile, Argentina, kind of going more north-south, as I think that's more the level that we're at right now. If we start winning those games, and that's definitely what we're working for, then we can start looking at playing against the Saxons, playing against Italy, playing against Romania, Georgia, those type of teams. But I don't think, personally, that's where we're at right now. We need to kind of build ourselves back up. We've got ourselves in a pretty bad spot over the last 15 years. And I think one of those reasons is because we didn't have the pride during that time. Because I think our underage setup is very good. Our under 18s are strong. Our under 20s are strong and getting stronger. But there's that real gap between under 20s to international rugby. MLR is starting to fill that gap. We've got a few guys over in Europe, some guys in the Southern Hemisphere. So that gap is starting to close a little bit. But we need more players. We need to over-resource the national team with these guys. So obviously the grassroots side of things needs to be worked on across the country. That comes from the provinces. And ourselves with Rugby Canada, we need to work a lot more on better resourcing our age grade teams, and then in turn the national teams. We've got real competition for places, and it's not just, we bring in all the pros in from this, that, and the other. We've got to get a group of kind of 45 to 60 guys who are constantly competing. We've got some consistency in selection, and we start building forward and beating teams around us before we start going into something like a Churchill Cup competition. That's
fair. Yeah. I mentioned on a couple of times I was chatting with some people on the pod about something similar to a Lions Tour. I love the Lions Tour. I think it's an amazing event, but I also think it's creating a bigger gap between tier 1 and tier 2, if you go by those names, because it was supposed to be this year, it's going to be next year. And when that's happening, South Africa, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, they're getting massive resources, which, rightfully so. but at the same time, Canada is supposed to be hosting England, meaning England's coming over, but we're not going to get to see Owen Farrell. We're not going to see Itoje. We're not going to see Ben Youngs. We're getting a tier 2 team, and maybe that's good for our rugby, but I've always thought in order to improve and to get better, you need to play the best that you can. Do you think something like a Lions tour, but like a North America, South America version of it could happen, where you'd have Canada, US, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil forming a team and maybe doing like a Lions tour to Europe or to, wherever? Do you think something like that could be viable?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I think you could do a North American Lions, a South American Lions. I think you could compete quite well looking at the talent that's there now. I think it's a great idea. It might maybe kind of flip things the other way. I think maybe over the next couple of years, it might be a bit too much to ask. But I think definitely if the North American bid can get the World Cup maybe in, was it 27, 31?
I think it's 27 or 31 they're looking, yeah.
So that would that could be something that could maybe coincide, maybe 2 years early to kind of get that fanfare going and kind of show the talent that's around. I think that'd be a great idea. If we can get everything off the ground, the biggest problem that we have definitely in North America and probably South America as well is just distance.
Yeah.
We're such a big country. Like I flew on Monday out to Newfoundland in 9.5 hours in the same country, right?
Yeah.
My friends don't understand that. Normally I'm flying home from Europe, but it takes 9.5 hours, not just going to Newfoundland.
Yeah,
but,
we got a big space here.
Yeah. But I mean, I think in the future, if we can start getting these little hotbeds of rugby across North America and start kind of building up those regions, that'll help kind of start connecting all the dots. I think, as I said earlier, MLR is a great tool to do that, as a majority of the teams are quite North American based, Canadian and American players, which is great. Hopefully the MLR as an entity continues to push that North American player quota. Whether they will or not, I hope they do, but it's up to them really. It's their baby.
For sure. I'd like to see a few more Canadian squads as well, but I guess I'm not sure of the parameters of gaining entrance into it or the financial backing that you would need. But I do love watching Toronto play. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, Toronto, Bill and Mark have done a great job with Chris as well. We've got some good young Canadian coaches. Aaron Carpenter's there running the forwards and doing a great job. So they've put in a huge amount of that investment, especially Bill and Mark, to be involved in the MLR, and they're going to lose quite a lot of money for the first probably 10 years, but I definitely hope, and I think they do, as well as all the other people involved in it, that it's going to build similar to what the MLS did 20 years ago. And build it into something where the franchises are worth a good amount of money, and they start to get some revenue, and they can kind of balance things out as opposed to only just giving. And they can start to get more people into stadiums. They get a good TV deal going, and just build it. And it's hugely positive, because you look at the last 3 years. The first couple of years, everybody thought, oh, is this going to be like pro rugby? Is it just going to blow up after 18 months? And it hasn't, and it's getting some good traction. You start to see some big names come over, I definitely hope that it'll continually build. I hope maybe we can get another Canadian team, or maybe an American team with some Canadian interests. I think that's probably the easier way to go about it, as opposed to starting a whole new franchise now, which is going to be, the cost I think is around 10 million in terms of initial entry fee, capital calls, and then your budget and all the rest of it. It's a big pill to swallow. So unless a couple millionaires that want to lose a bit of money, it's going to be hard to get something like that going, unless it's in an entity that's already going right now.
Yeah, it's not something I can afford to do on my teacher's salary, but maybe someday. All right. So I usually prep my guests for this section, but I forgot to do that here. But what we do now is I kind of take a break from the generic questions and we jump into what I call a quick fire section. And I've got a bunch of questions. It's just basically you're going to give me a 1 or 2 word answer. Sometimes people talk a little bit longer, but it's for fun to kind of get to know you a little bit better as a person, and just to have a little bit of fun. Sound like you're up for it?
I'm up for it.
All right. So first handful are about rugby. Then after that, it's kind of more about you as a person. All right. Best team you ever faced?
Best team I ever faced. Oh, it'd be the All Blacks in the New Zealand World Cup in 07 or 20. Yes.
2011.
2011. Sorry, I'm getting them all mixed up. 2011. Yeah.
It's a nice mistake to be able to make.
Yeah.
I remember watching that because Chauncey's a buddy of mine, and I was texting, I guess, BlackBerry Messenger before the game saying that's awesome. You get to line up against Richie McCaw. And he writes back. He goes, he's not even in the lineup. I was disappointed. All right, best player you ever faced?
Best player ever faced. There's quite a few. I'll go to my old buddy Paul O'Connell. We had some good battles over the years and throughout Europe, and then again in my final World Cup game with Canada against Ireland.
I was going to ask you about Paul. I found a few clips on YouTube of some hockey fight styles happening there, but still any animosity between you two, or
no animosity at all. As you know, in rugby, it's everything happens on the field stays on the field.
Yeah.
And, it's there's no animosity at all. The only reason that all escalated into what it was I thought we were both going to get 5 for fighting. As good Canadians, if I'm going to go, well, you're going to go too.
Yeah.
So you send a couple, you take a couple, and everybody has a laugh, and we go off for 10 minutes. And then I got the red card, so I thought, I've done something wrong here. And when I actually look back at it, well, I thought we both did pretty much the same thing. So we just should have been a yellow card for everybody, and that would have been the end of it.
Yeah. All right. So this might be the answer for your next one. Toughest player you ever faced?
Toughest player? There's been a few.
I usually tell the guys or girls that I'm on, like, this is the person that if you're looking up and it's a 1v1, you don't want this person running at you with the ball.
Then that'd be either Henry Tuilagi or Chris Masoi.
Yeah. Okay.
I've run into Henry quite a few times and not always come off the winner. That's for sure.
All right. 7s or 15s?
Oh, 15s. 7s is a completely different game.
It is. Best match you were ever a part of?
Besides my first cap for Canada in Chicago way back when, I'd have to say our top 14 winning game against Perpignan in 2010. May 29th, 2010, Clermont finally winning the Bouclier after 100 years of existence, after 11 different finals lost. And I had already been involved in 3 of them. To win on the 4th one and basically see Clermont erupt was something to behold. So I'll definitely keep that one.
Sounds a little bit like the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah.
Favorite rugby tradition?
Favorite rugby tradition. The biggest one for me is that shaking hands at the end of the game. Hammering each other for 80 minutes or even up to 100 minutes on some games. And the ability to, when the final whistle goes, everything's pardoned, everything's good. You look your opponent in the eye, shake his hand, thanks for the battle, and off to the change room and maybe have a beer with them after.
You don't see that very few other places, I don't think.
No, that's right.
Best team you played with?
Best team. I was very fortunate to be invited to the World 15 back in, when was it? I think it was 2009. No, 2011, I think. And we played a game against the classic All Blacks in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. I went out there and geez, it was, I pulled in about I think it was a Tuesday. It was about 42 degrees with humidity, and
Gross.
yeah, it was gross. We were out, had this rock star team kind of assembled from like Europe, Southern Hemisphere. There was guys, from all over, all different, Super Rugby, from the Premiership, from top 14. Vern Cotter was the coach at that time, and we had a really fun week with lots of dinners and a few beers after training at the cricket club in KL, and then we played the Classic All Blacks that weekend, and we won. And it was a lot of fun. One of the great games to be involved with. It wasn't kind of a high pressure game because it was very very fun and very it was kind of put together as a bit of a spectacle. But we had a lot of fun.
Is that why it was in Malaysia? It was just like a spectacle, as you said, or?
Yeah, well, it was put together by some investment banks, and they basically put it all on, and they called in the Classic All Blacks, paid for all that. So there was a lot of, kind of alakadu stuff in the week where we showed up and had different meals, and there was banquets and a bunch of, investment bankers and bankers and all these people that, wish they would have played sports in their days, but they're happy to play for a good week for the boys and have a game on the weekend. So it was
That's cool. That's really cool. All right. Best nickname that you've heard?
For myself, well, there's a few, but
what is your nickname?
My nickname, well, I've got a few, but it originally started Squamish because in North Vancouver nobody knew who I was when I originally joined the Capellanos, and they said, "Oh, who's the big guy from Squamish?" And it just kind of stuck. So everybody called me Squamish. And then another coach at Capellanos, Roger Hatch, he goes, "Look at that big guy. He's so cuddly. He just wants to cuddle." And so they started calling me Cuddles. More Cuddles, and kind of went from there.
Great rugby nickname, yeah.
Yeah, and it's always the ones that are that you hate that always stick. So
that's right.
There's no point in fighting it. And then I had a good one in France where Jacques Delmas, who was the original coach of Grenoble when I arrived, he called me the sheriff because there was an instance where I had come into the game and we weren't playing very well. And I cleared out a ruck and somebody eye gouged me, and I peeled him over the back of the ruck and started feeding into him. And then we kind of kept playing and pick and go. And this guy was still on the ground after he had been dealt with. And so Jacques called me out in video on the Monday. He's going off in French. He goes, "You see this? We're playing like shit. And then all of a sudden the sheriff comes in. He has to deal to this man, and then we score a try." And then there, you get called the sheriff in front of everybody in the team, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm never going to hear the end of it." So
Sheriff's better than Cuddles, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. So I don't know if you've been watching. Have you watched the Michael Jordan documentary?
I've been watching a bit. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
All right. So for you, who was the Jordan, who was the Pippen, and who was the Robin players you played with?
Who's the Jordan? What I played with? Hard to say. I'd say like somebody that pushed themselves that much and was kind of the ultimate perfectionist. I would say a guy I used to play with called Tony Marsh. He was a Kiwi guy who moved to France quite young, as he found he was barred to any advancement in the All Blacks. So moved to France, became French qualified, and started playing for France. Tony was a guy who was quite introvert. He's one of the only guys I've ever seen that never warmed up with the team, which in rugby is quite bizarre. You don't see that very much. He would warm up in the hallway outside the change room, and then he would come out really for only like the last 5 minutes of the warm up when we do our launch plays. So I'd say he was very similar to that. He would ask a lot of the people around him. He would always do things to the most extreme levels, like the fitness stuff. He was always first. He was always proper on his nutrition. Always had his little kind of package of food in change rooms and stuff where he'd eat right after training. And you didn't see that much, especially in France, where they said you were professional, but a lot of guys didn't act like professionals, you know, in terms of the weight room, in terms of nutrition, in terms of all those things that kind of make your body react and deal with the load and be professional. He was one of those guys that, you know, really kind of pushed that.
What position did he play?
He played center. Yeah, he played center internationally for France. I think he played, you know, probably 25, 30 times for France. I could be wrong. He was involved in the World Cup a few times with them, and he was really, really a very, very good player and a great mentor for somebody who, when I first came to Clermont, and I always loved my training, and I loved that whole kind of aspect of things and preparing myself. That was kind of one of my marks of difference at that time, in that, you know, I knew that, you know, I'm the guy from Canada. Nobody's going to take you seriously. Everyone thinks you should be walking in with a hockey stick. You know what I mean? The old kind of stereotype of the Canadian guy.
Yeah.
I knew if I worked harder, I was stronger in the gym, I dominated my play in the field, I know I'd be able to keep playing and keeping on the field. And Tony kind of affirmed that with seeing how much he worked and how well he did through all that hard work.
Okay.
He would be he'd be one. The Rodman, geez, I don't know. I've seen a few colorful characters come through the teams I've been involved with, but the Rodman was probably Sione Luaki, who was number 8, who more so than Rodman was an amazing player. But he changed his hair every week. He had tattoos up the yin yang. Like he's getting new tattoos on his neck, on his face, on his back every week. He changed his hairstyle, and you know, he's the only guy I've ever seen buy a pizza and buy a lasagna and put the lasagna on top of the pizza and eat all of it at once. But yeah, but in terms of like rugby ability, was like off the charts. When he was motivated and wanted to do something, he could pretty much do anything. He cut guys in half in defense, offload, you know, running down the field with the ball in one hand like a loaf of bread, and he's doing this, that, and the other. It was something quite a sight to behold. But and then the Pippin, the setup man, geez, it's hard to say. It's difficult, you know. It kind of maybe doesn't work, but you know, there's guys like well, maybe Brock James back in the day. He was he was a facilitator, right? He's the guy that used the ball as well as any, you know, in terms of distributing, in terms of kicking, and you know, setting people up with those cross-field kicks and finishing games with good goal kicking ability, and his passing ability with like long passes on a string to put people through holes. It was very, very good. Didn't really appreciate the defensive side of things, which I think was one of his downfalls. But you know, not everybody can be strong everywhere. So you know, he was very good at the things he did well.
Awesome. All right. Any 3 that you would take golfing with you?
Any 3 of those 3, or any other?
No, anybody, alive, dead, rugby, non-rugby.
Oh yeah, golf. Well, I haven't played golf in about 15 years, but
that you would take fishing with you then.
So I'm gonna start again. I think I'll just go with my brothers, my 2 brothers and my dad. We haven't had a chance to kind of do anything like golf over the last 20 years being in Europe. And I think the next 3 who I will go golfing with will be them.
That's great. That's a great choice. All right. Chips or cookies?
Chips or cookies?
Yeah.
I'd take probably chips. Yeah.
What kind?
Just your classic kind of nacho chips with some salsa. Nothing too crazy.
French fries or onion rings?
Well, French fries.
French fries or poutine?
French fries again.
Favorite beer?
Favorite beer? Well, when I was a kid growing up in Squamish, it was always Kokanee. So
Okay.
I'll still stay with the Kokanee. Yeah.
All right. Do they still make that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
All right. What's a guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. I'm not too much into sweet stuff, but I don't mind a big Côte de Boeuf, or like I guess here you call it a tomahawk, or like something like that. Côte de Boeuf is like a big rib on steak, and you just slap some butter on that and throw it on the barbecue, and that's me for the weekend.
All right. Best place for a post-match beer?
Post-match beer. I think the best place I've ever had a post-match beer was, again, going back to 2010 when we won the top 14, and we were in the Stade de France, and obviously in the Stade de France the change rooms are very, very big, and in one end there's a big it's basically like a jacuzzi, an in-ground jacuzzi, and we were in there with the boucle in the jacuzzi having beers, and that was probably one of the best places I've ever had a post-match beer.
Interesting. All right. What series are you binge watching right now?
I don't do too much binge watching, but my wife and I we've watched the Jordan documentary, and then we just started Pretty Little Fires, and it's actually, I think it's very, very well done, and especially in the context of the Black Lives Matter and all the unrest in Canada and especially in the States. I think it's very much on point as to what
Is that Reese Witherspoon?
Yes, and I think Kerry Washington was very, very good in it. And
I'll have to look. Yeah, this one that's on my list to look at.
Yeah, good one.
All right, what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie is Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, nice classic. Who would play you in the Netflix movie of your life?
Who would play? Oh, geez, I don't know. An actor. I'm trying to think of an actor that looks like me, but I don't.
Doesn't have to look like you.
No, I guess you're right. I don't know. Maybe my brother. Is an actor, so.
Okay. All right. Who would be the lead?
Kind of looking version, so I think that probably will go well. He's a pretty boy.
Who would be the leading lady?
The leading lady. Oh, I don't know.
So I'll just throw this out there. A few guys have answered this and they wouldn't answer it. So they were scared to get in trouble. But a few guys have said, well, my wife knows I have a crush on this one. So you can play it safe, or you can just, it's up to you.
Me and my wife are on stable ground. We don't have to worry about stuff like that. As an actress, leading lady, I don't know. There's a lot of good ones, but geez, I never even thought about that. I can't even think of anybody right now, to be honest.
That's fair.
Pretty girl, you take Giselle Bundchen 9 times out of 10. She's not an actress, so I don't know if it would work.
It's your movie. She could be. All right, last one. Who had the biggest impact on you as a player? I dare say your dad, but.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that there's not just one person. I'd say there's probably at least 3. One being my father at the beginning of my career, and kind of creating an awareness of rugby, and then pushing me on and helping me kind of get into rugby. Then the next one would be Tim Murdy, who was the original coach at the Capellanos when I joined the club, and he was really, really good in kind of forming a lot of the different kind of ideals through my game. And then later on professionally would be Vern Cotter, who I worked with for 8 years, and then worked a lot, definitely over the last 4 or 5 years in my coaching career, sounding off a lot of ideas and, basically not a mentor, but doing some mentor type activities and, questioning and asking and just basically working through different problems and kind of a soundboard of things that you're trying to work through. So those 3 would definitely be my go-tos.
Excellent. All right, so that's it for the quick fire. Just got a few questions left, and then we'll be done here, Jamie. But you spoke on and off about the Pacific Pride. What can you tell us about the program itself that can help the national team kind of gain that level of respectability it had in the 90s and early 2000s and stuff. As we've been, as you've noted, and it's apparent that over the last 15 years, our ranking kind of keeps going in the wrong direction. How can the Pacific Pride help that kind of regroup?
As I said earlier, the biggest thing we can do is we can help resource the national team with good, prepared players. I think, as I said earlier, the age grade setup is very good. It obviously can get better, and the people that are involved in that know that, and they're trying to do their best, and they're working very, very hard to get there. We are doing the same thing, but just in an age grade which is a little bit older. So I've got a lot of the under 20 guys. I've got a lot of guys who are a little bit older that will hopefully be able to go on and resource the national team. It just basically it creates a fire under everybody's ass. You know, the guys who have made it to the national team, they know that they've got hungry young kids behind them that are trying to push them. So it pushes those guys. It pushes the guys in the Pride program, knowing that there's opportunities. I've had, I think, 11 guys go on to MLR contracts this last season, and more are to go this year. That pushes guys again. So we've got more guys coming through the under 20 program, into the Pride program, off onto MLR, off onto sevens, off into the national team setup. And it just creates a better environment, more competition, you know, more kids on the ground, more. Everybody goes back to the old, more cows, more milk, more cream, right? And everything kind of rises to the top. So I think our setup is crucial in preparing these guys for the next level, because it doesn't happen overnight, and you can't blood these guys in games. It's too late. Sure, we're going to have to start blooding new guys over the next 4-year cycle to the World Cup, but we need these guys to be prepared so that when they do come to the national team or they go into an MLR setup, that they're prepared. They're prepared physically, they're prepared mentally, they know what they need to do to compete at that level. The load that is needed, they get through that load in a proper time frame. It's not rushed. That's one of the great things now with COVID, in that, you know, I've got a lot of guys who they needed recovery. They've now got that. Now they're back in the gym. They've got a good foundation. They're back running again. They're getting that running foundation. They're getting that weights foundation. That skills piece is going to come when we can start getting back on the field, which hopefully for us is going to be August, September. Obviously socially distanced, of course, but you know, that's fine. You can pass, you know, 4 or 5 meters, 2 meters, and work on that skill element, because that's a big work on for us. Catch, pass, skill, catching over your head, making sure you can pass off both hands, running with your heads up so you can see opportunities and play what's on. So I think the Pride program is it's an integral piece in our rugby infrastructure to help bring the national team up into the teens and hopefully the top 10 over the next 10 years, because I think that's where we legitimately need to be. And we have the athletes to do it. We just need to build them up to actually get there and stay there.
You mentioned a really great point there. It's something that I think Rugby Canada struggled with over recent times. It's using, you know, your head up while you're running, like we call it, where I coach, on-field awareness, just being aware of what's happening, being able to see where defense is, being able to see what type of offense you can put in play. And I think if you can teach that at the under 18, under 20, at the Pacific Pride, it definitely will strengthen our team, because, as you said, we do have really good athletes. Some of them are coming from a background where maybe they might not have picked rugby up until they're 15 or 16. So getting that awareness across to them is definitely key. So how can players join the Pride? Like, how does that get set up?
So we've created a national talent ID database, which is currently being populated. Adam Kleberger, who ex-Canadian international, has coached in Canada for the last little while, done a huge job with the academy, the women's academy sevens. Last year, we brought him over in January into the Pride program as he coaches with me, and on top of that, he is also the talent ID manager for across the country. Adam's done an amazing amount of work in building this database. Before it was run by Matt Barr and Kenny Goodland, who they had names, teams, and age groups, and they had magnets on a big whiteboard in our office, and we kind of took that over and put it onto a database called Sports Office, which now Rugby Canada, we've put everything in the same place so everybody can access it. And he's created a talent ID network across the country of provincial leads and then finders and fetchers down underneath that, of just people that play rugby, not necessarily coaches, because coaches can sometimes only promote their own players, but, you know, people that love rugby and people that are passionate, you know, like yourself, because there's thousands of people across the country that love rugby and they want to see it get better, and they want to see somebody succeed from their neck of the woods. And, you know, the whole reason that, you know, this is going to work, because Canada is so big, but if we've got these people in little pockets across the country that are populating these lists, and they're saying, listen, I got this kid who has played rugby since 6 years old, he's got great game awareness, but maybe he needs a little bit more in this area. Or I got a kid that came from football who doesn't want to play football anymore and he wants to play rugby because he played it as a kid, and he's a crazy athlete. He played like Div 1 football down in the States, and we got a few guys like that. Those guys get put on the database, and then we try to find the best place for these guys. Do they go to university locally? Do they get put in the Nova Scotia Academy with Jack? You know, in Newfoundland, do we send them to a local club, so then they can get more rugby experience and then keep building? Are they in Alberta or Manitoba or Saskatchewan? Do they need to go to a local university? Do they need to go somewhere maybe like the Wolfpack with Graham Moffat in Alberta? Is that what makes sense for them? So really just trying to find all these kids around the country and angle them to where is best for their pathway and their advancement. And then we've got certain guys who we've got on long-term lists, definitely around certain positions. We've created a project prop where we want a lot of kids that play prop to try to get them in the pipeline, because we need a lot of props. If we don't have a stable platform at the international level, it's difficult to play rugby. And then all the other positions as well, you know, 9s, 10s. Do we have 10s who can see the game, that can manage a game, not just play what's in front of them, but also put the ball in the right places and make sure that we're moving downhill? You know, there's so many different aspects to it. It's a huge amount of work, especially what Adam's done and what he's been doing over the last kind of 3 months. It's actually been good. The COVID for him has been good. He's been able to really get his teeth into that, and I've been trying to learn it as well these last few months. So, you know, there's things that are happening. That there's a lot of really hard work that's been put in, definitely since I've come last August, and you know, things are looking very positive. But unfortunately, it's going to take time for, you know, all this work to start bearing fruit. You know, if we were going to have games this summer, which obviously we're not going to, a lot of younger guys who have come through the under-20 program and now the MLR teams, were going to be involved in the national team. And, you know, we're going to start to see some new fresh faces. Unfortunately, as I said, we're not going to see that, but maybe in October, November, we'll start to see some type of international rugby. But definitely for next year, we're going to start to see a lot of new fresh faces and get kind of some young, exciting guys into the squad and start trying to knock off teams that are around us.
Great. So with that, like I had Adam on a little while ago. He's going to be on one of the pods here coming up soon, and we talked a little bit about that. But you gave it a lot more detail. As the coach of the Pride, and, you know, as a former national player, what do you look for with these players? Like when you look at a kid with a lot of character and a modicum of skill set, or you look at a kid with a lot of skill, but he's got a weak character, or he's not a team player. What do you do in that situation? Like, what do you look for? What do you try and improve on? Things like that.
Well, if it's a situation like that with a character flaw, you've got to look really, really hard, because I'd prefer to take somebody who's maybe less skilled but has better character, better work ethic, maybe has more size, whatever it may be. There's Warren Gatlin has a thing where he looks at three different aspects. He looks at skill, size, or speed. And if you've got two of those, you should be all right. And I tend to agree. I'd like to add character into that as well, because especially at a pride level, we don't want any shitheads, as a lot of people talk about that as well. But you want people that are good in a team environment, because that goes a long way to having a healthy team environment for guys that are competing. Good competition is fine, but you don't want people, trying to throw sticks in people's spokes or whatever it may be, because they've got bad character traits. I prefer to have somebody who's, prefers to work hard and get over those skill deficiencies, because those can be learned and gotten better, than the guy that's going to, be a cancer in a team. I can't deal with that.
Yeah, I completely agree 100%. You can teach skill, but it's hard to change somebody's character if they've been ingrained, if it's been ingrained in them. So just a little bit left here. This has been it's been a great chat, I find, but let's look a little bit something else here. You've been an advocate for concussion awareness. Can you talk to us about that? Like maybe with your role with your old pro team in Claremont, can you talk to us about that aspect? Yeah.
So, it all started with a bad episode of mine during the semifinal in 2015 of the Champions Cup, and then the final 2 weeks later. So I was played through 3 different concussions in 2 games in a 2-week period. I was in the final. I was taken off the field for an HIA, head injury assessment, at the beginning of the game, and then again for blood at the 67th minute in the second half. All that starting 2 weeks earlier in the semifinal, when I came into a ruck at the same time as Billy Vunipola, and we both smashed heads, kind of like two rams up in the woods, and we both kind of groggily tried to walk away from it. I ended up going off for blood. 2 weeks later, playing in the final, first tackle I made, I was sparked out, and not because I hit my head, but just because of the impact on my shoulder was enough to knock me out. And then in the second half, I went off for blood after getting a head knock, started vomiting in the change room, got stitched up, and was allowed to go back on the field and finish the game. So that started about a month and a half, 2 months of really, really bad symptoms. I didn't sleep for about 10 days. I was a monster at home. I had no support from my club. Didn't even get a phone call to see if I was all right. It was really, really bad time, tough time for my wife and kids, because they couldn't come near me. I couldn't deal with sound, light, any of that. So we kind of saw this as, seeing how concussions were being dealt with in North America in a very proactive way. In France, in that time, and that was only 2015, it was only 5 years ago, it was very much sweeping under the rug. Don't worry, he's a tough guy. He'll get through it. Don't worry about it. It was very much, very old school, very, kind of 70s or 80s for us here in North America. So my wife did a lot of research on it. I did a lot as well, and realized that, in France, nobody was talking about this. You'd go into rugby clubs, and the only things you'd see on the walls were a lot of paraphernalia about not betting on rugby, because that was kind of the big push that the FFR had done those last 5 years. And we're like, this is ridiculous, because there's nothing about concussion awareness. And, the biggest thing we've always said in developing our foundation, Rugby Safety Network, and in the work that we did with youth rugby clubs across France, was it's all about education. You're not going to take concussions out of rugby. It's always going to happen. Concussions happen everywhere. Concussions happen with kids falling off their bikes, with people falling in the bathtub, going downstairs, being in car accidents. There's many different things where it happens. And if it happens in rugby, it needs to be dealt with properly. So we did a lot of work on the which was, neck strengthening exercises, tackle technique drills, learning how to fall, learning how to roll, all these things that kids need to learn anyway. And then into the moment that it happens, especially at youth level, in that kids were seeing on the weekends, top 14, guys getting knocked out, coming straight back on, or just getting the magic sponge on the back of the neck and they're coming back on. And kids are doing this on the weekend, on the Sundays at mini rugby or at club rugby. And that's just not acceptable, right?
Right.
So that was the biggest thing we wanted to do, was to be proactive around this problem in France and educate people around it. And on the whole, it was very, very well received. There was obviously some of the old school who thought, we don't need to talk about this stuff. It's not a big deal. You put the magic sponge on the neck and you'll be good to go. But the horrible thing was, between 2015 and 2018, 5 children died playing rugby. Two through concussions, and 1 through a neck break, and 2 others with thoracic shock. Big tackles. Obviously, concussion was involved as well, but it was deemed that it was thoracic shock that stopped their hearts. And I thought, this is ridiculous. In France alone, this many kids dying playing rugby is unbelievable. And obviously, you have the Stringer family that went through that terrible loss here in Canada. And I saw what was happening in Canada and how people were being proactive and try to deal with the problem properly. And in France, it was getting swept under the rug. So that's why we really pushed. We set up our foundation. We did a lot of work, my wife and I, through that. And just tried to be proactive around the problem and help kids. And we went to different rugby schools all around France. We were godfathers at a tournament in Monaco last year. We were supposed to go again this year, but obviously everything got canceled due to COVID. And just being proactive around the problem, teaching kids about tackle technique, and when it does happen, what to do, making sure that, they're taken to a doctor and they get set up. And it's not a bad thing to tell your teammates that, oh, you know what, I don't feel that right. I don't feel good. Maybe I just need to just take 5 and talk with a physio or the doctor or a parent and get some proper care, because, it's unacceptable that, kids are dying playing sport.
I agree 100%. Are you still suffering any symptoms?
I still have difficulty with loud noises sometimes, and sometimes bright light. Memory seems to be okay. All the other things seem to be all right, but I think I'm doing okay. I ran into a lot of rucks throughout my life, so it's definitely something that will probably catch up with me. But I think it's really important for us now with all the data out there that we take care of the kids that we're dealing with. I know in the Pride we had some concussion issues, and when our guys have anything like that, they're straight in the physio room. They're straight with the doctor. There's no question of us putting them back on the field until they're fully cleared. There's no rush. Rugby's a small part of our lives. Our lives are going to go hopefully for a very, very long time. And if the guy misses 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 4 months, well, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I've always found, I guess, over the last number of years, that World Rugby has been kind of leading sport advocate for concussion awareness. So hearing this story about what's going on in France, that's real disheartening. Especially, those 5 kids and how you were treated at your pro team. That's just, it's unacceptable. And it's a shame that they were still stuck in that era. I mean, I played rugby and hockey, and I had 9 concussions. My last was in 2006, and I still have symptoms to this day. And, for me, I'm 43, and playing, contact sports in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, there really wasn't that much talk around concussions. You just kind of kept going.
No, that's it. And that's because back in those days, we didn't have the data. It just wasn't there. People weren't talking about it. Researchers weren't looking at it. And, you talk about World Rugby. I've talked to a lot of the directors and the administrative side at World Rugby, and they're beside themselves with France, because France are like the black sheep. They're like the bad kid in the class. They don't want to listen. And they put up all these excuses saying, well, all the pro team doctors won't come up to Paris and have a big meeting and all the rest of it. It's because they don't think they need to, because they think they know exactly what they're doing, and that they'll just keep going, doing things as they all have always done them. But as we all know, tradition in sport can be good, but it can also be very, very dangerous if you don't adapt.
Do you think World Rugby would bring any sanctions onto them? Like, if you don't adhere to this, you're out of the next World Cup, or like, is that too strict? What do you think?
I don't think they will, because if you look at the guys who are now, you've got Bernard Laporte, ex FFR president. He's crooked as he's crooked as a sickle on the old USSR flag, and he's the criminal, basically. Like, I was very disappointed to see that him and Bill Beaumont got through. I thought it should have been Augustin Pichot. I know Augustin, he's a younger guy, and I know not a lot of change is going to happen at that level, because it's more at the executive level where things get changed. But I think the winds of change would have slowly started to come through World Rugby if Gus had got elected. But it's too little, too late now, and now we just need to keep building forward, and hopefully that people start adapting and start changing their ideas around concussion, especially, and then in World Rugby's thing around just trying to create a better global calendar. And like you talk about the Lions going down to South Africa, that's great, but that's just the same unions making more money.
Yeah, that's five clubs, 5 unions right there out of the entire global game. When you hear Bill Beaumont speak about it, he goes, well, they're their own entity. They can, we're not going to touch anything because that's when they do it, but it impacts the entire global game, yet you're allowing them to dictate the calendars to when they do things.
Yeah.
It's awesome to watch, but
yeah. It's the old boys club, right? And that's why I thought it would be great for Gus to be elected in and start trying to adapt and change that. Because there's a lot of countries in the world that are playing rugby and enjoying it, and they need that support. The old boys club of the 5 nations, really, because the 6 nations, sure, it's 6 nations, but Italy aren't really part of it, even though yes, they are.
Yeah.
When it comes down to the Lions, Italy's not involved. So
no, I was a little disappointed in Rugby Canada, and you probably can't speak to it, but I still don't understand why RC voted in Beaumont back again and turned their back on Pichot. But I'm not the one making those decisions either. So hopefully they get information that the rest of the public in Canada didn't understand.
Yeah, no, there's no. I don't think anybody turned their back on Gus. Gus is still going to try to advocate and work in South America for their interests, and that's great. And Rugby Canada has made their decision to make sure that we've got some stability, because I think that's definitely what we need over the next cycle. We're gonna keep controlling what we can control, and that's rugby in Canada, and with the pride, with the age grade stuff, and the national team, and trying to get better. And that's the biggest thing we can concentrate on. And the World Rugby stuff will whether it benefits us or not, we'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah. All right. Last thing, can you leave us with any good rugby stories? Something, maybe throw a teammate under the bus, something fun that happened that kind of sums up or epitomizes a good rugby tour?
A good rugby tour. Well,
you've been on quite a few.
I've been very fortunate to be on quite a few. I think I've had some good ones in New Zealand, going up to the Bay of Islands, and some good ones in France, going around to different places down to Spain, and over into I remember my first one with Thanathi. We went on a preseason tour to Slovenia, and that was pretty amazing. I think the best one was my first one with the Pride, when we went to Germany. Thanks to Carl Fix, a great rugby supporter out in Saskatchewan, and Carl set it up with David Clark to go to Germany. And Carl's German, so he basically smoothed everything out and set up the whole tour. And we went around Germany, south of Germany, into northern France as well, and had an amazing time. Learning about culture and playing different games, and we played the German national team as an under-23 team and beat them, and that was a huge finish to the tour. And just being, Canadians abroad with a bunch of guys who really enjoyed ourselves in what we did, and we were being successful at what we were doing, and his organization, the group that we had. Drinking liter steins of beer in the beer houses after games and stuff. It was just it was really, really fun. We ended up staying with three buddies. We ended up staying in Europe for a week after that. We went off on trains around Europe and ended up in Innsbruck in Austria because we got kicked out of Czech Republic because we didn't have the right visas back at those days. Ended up going skiing in the summer and drinking more big liter steins of beer. Not getting hungover really because the beer was so fresh. And no, it was a really, really good, fun time. And that was my kind of first foray into Europe. And it definitely created a bit of a fire under my ass saying, I wanted to come back here and I wanted to enjoy myself in these countries a little bit more as, we had a great time.
That's great. Well, listen, Jamie, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. Great insight on the game in Canada, and really appreciate what you said, and our listeners will definitely enjoy it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, cheers. That was great. Loved chatting rugby with Jamie. Very knowledgeable guy. Heart, gritty player, just full of character on the pitch. You can ask Paul O'Connell about that. Tough Canadian for sure, and he's done a lot for the game on the pitch, and now he's doing a lot off of it. Oh, geez, it's one of those days, I guess. And it was great having Jamie on to chat with us, especially about that Pacific Pride program, which he's going to turn into something spectacular for us in Canada. So thank you very much, Jamie. It was awesome. Love to have you back on at another time. Coming up soon, we have Pam Buisa. Pam, as I said earlier, is a up-and-coming 7-star for Canada and Black Lives Matter activist as well. We have Karen Paquin, very funny, very knowledgeable player for Canada on the 7-15 stage. And we have Jeff Hassler. Jeff's chatted with us a few days ago. Really funny guy. He's got some great stories. Ray Barkwell as well. He's actually doing his master's in coaching right now, and he's actually taking some classes with one of my colleagues. So he was fun to talk with. And shortly after that, we'll have Nadia Popov on as well to talk rugby and mental health among athletes. So as typical, I just continue to say thanks to everybody that's still working, whether you're an essential worker, whether you've been working in the grocery store, or driving transport, or working at the fire stations or the police department, whatever. Thank you so much for looking after all of us during the global pandemic. As always, we need to say thanks to Ben Sound Music for supplying us with our tunes that's featured at the start and end of each pod. And as always, I love hearing topic requests from all of you. Feel free to send me a note with thoughts or suggestions or questions you want to ask us, especially that the next few that are coming up. So as always, I want to sign off. It's Jamie. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, keep on rocking.